This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by...
We were doing some jury outreach in front of the Manchester Superior Court building, where, by the way, the bureaucrats behave differently than the local Superior Court.
Well, she's not answering questions, sir.
She doesn't have to answer questions. It's not required.
That's fine.
She's obeying the law. She doesn't
We
have
were
to
lied
answer anything.
We were lied to in the other court.
I don't know anything what happened to you down
I know.
there.
Each person needs to individually not have to be responsible. But the system does things like this. They lied to us in the court.
Would you mind telling us where Russell Canning is
Are you
being?
recording now?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. You can't do that right now
Well,
without, you know.
I brought a camera into the courtroom because you think it was just a hold?
Well, to record in the courtroom with permission from there. You're not allowed to just do it here. Could you turn that off, please?
So you're not on public record then?
They are very grumpy and very mean towards activists here in Cheshire County, but at Manchester, they're usually pretty, relatively laid back, and they take it easy. So I complimented the bailiffs today when I was leaving the courtroom on being gentlemen.
Yeah, when we were out there for a trial for a gentleman named Garrett Ian, and they were really nice. Like they said, please, please turn off your cell phones. And
right.
It's amazing how willing people will be to do things for you if you just ask nicely.
Ask them nicely, exactly.
Yeah.
So, in fact, Garrett was there today shooting. I'm sure he'll put something together for freeconcord.org. And, of course, I'll put the full trial video up of Kate's trial. Again, she was, by the way, I didn't mention, she was found guilty by this jury of so-called resisting arrest, even though it was caught on video. And basically the police's perspective is anything you do that is not exactly what they tell you to do is resisting arrest.
We're here because on June 4th, 2011, I allegedly resisted arrest, delaying the arrest by 1 second. You'll see two videos today, and in the first video, it will begin with me standing on the corner watching police officers a few yards down the sidewalk talking, and then you'll see that nonchalantly they form a semicircle around me, and then Sergeant Patty politely asks me, "Excuse me, would you get off the chalk, please?" I was a little bit confused because I did see that there was chalk on...
Roach.
So the idea that she went somewhat limp as they were arresting her, they called that resisting arrest. The idea that she, didn't exactly... they claimed that she tried to pull her hand back around in front of her, which they always make that claim. I don't know if there was any real evidence of that being on video at all.
I watched the video. It wasn't... When I think resisting arrest, I had a lieutenant who's now the police chief who, he basically said, look, if you're going to charge someone with resisting arrest, it should be because they're like swinging at you.
Throwing a punch, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or trying to run away or something like that.
Right. Not just like, confused in the moment,
right.
Trying to figure out what the heck it is you want her to do. She
made the point that she wasn't trying to run, and the cops agreed she wasn't trying to run. At one point, one of the cops tried to claim that he was scared that she might have done something to him. I mean, we're talking about a 17-year-old girl here.
Yeah, who's really nice.
Yeah,
and
she's very sweet. And so the cops were just being ludicrous. But fact is, people trust the cops. And this jury came back after 45 minutes of deliberations with a guilty verdict. They had called, I guess, to ask for the videos so they could watch them. So I guess there was some question about it for a short period of time. And then, as usual... whoever the holdouts were decided to flip over to, guilty.
I want lunch. Let's get this over with. Or
they'd already had lunch.
Right.
But they wanted to get out and didn't want it to come back the next day.
Right.
But it's just so disappointing. People are so likely to go along with the group. You could still say not guilty. By the way, this is something to remind you of since we were talking about jury nullification. If you find yourself on a jury and you find yourself in the position where you can nullify bad law, because plenty of juries are being selected across the country for people that have never harmed another person. If that's you, then go ahead and hold out. If you know the law is bad, vote not guilty. Your one vote can cause that mistrial and make the state have to go through the process all over again, which sometimes they will, sometimes they won't.
I can't see them wanting to do that again in this case.
Not in this case, no.
Yeah, I mean, like a sexual assault case or a homicide case, sure, but for a chalking case, I mean, I can't believe they wanted to go through this once, let alone Wait, this was the second time, wasn't it?
This was a de novo trial.
Yeah, Jesus.
Now, I have a friend in Florida who told me that he got on a jury once recently, and he found himself in a position where he was pressured, where he broke. And he should have known better.
Why can't you just sit there and say, "Hey, sorry"?
It's groupthink. It's peer pressure, and somebody who knew better broke. So I think it'd be absolutely fascinating to be a fly in the wall for one of these jury experiments, one of these what do they call them, deliberations?
Yeah,
it would be fascinating to have a microphone in there and be able to actually hear what goes on, what sort of discussions they're having.
It is your duty as jurors to follow all of the instructions I'm about to give you, regardless of any opinions you may have as to what the law is or the law ought to be.
In this trial, you've seen 2 videos and heard testimony from 3 different police officers. The testimony of the 3 police officers had parts that were conflicting. In the video, there is no scene that can obviously and clearly be determined as struggling or resisting. Mucci stated that I delayed the arrest maybe 4 or 5 seconds, yet there is no 4 or 5 second clip of struggling. You have heard different interpretations of what happened, or what, based on the evidence, could reasonably be believed to have happened. I ask that you consider the evidence presented to you and find me not guilty based on lack of proof and, quite simply, that I did not resist arrest.
Who do you like?
Look at that video closely, and you will see that the defendant was struggling with them. All 3 testified that she was struggling when they were trying to handcuff her. It took 3 police officers to handcuff the defendant because she wouldn't submit to the arrest. We are not here to decide whether what the defendant was doing was legitimate. You're not here to decide whether you agree or disagree with the Manchester Police Department and what they did. It is not for us to decide whether they are right or wrong.
The law, as I give it to you in these instructions, is the law that you must follow in reaching your verdict. It is up to you to decide the facts of this case.
Afterwards, after the guilty verdict came down, the man in the robe took a very long time to issue his penalties against Kate. Like, he was being very judicious up there, flipping pages in his book and just sitting there looking at things. And he asked her a bunch of questions about, like, what she wanted to do with her life. And he was coming at it from the perspective of, she's 18, this shouldn't ruin your life, this kind of thing. And
standing on chalk.
You're not going to listen to me because I'm old enough to be your grandfather, but I'm going to tell you this anyway. Because I have a son, and I grew up in the 60s, and I understand a lot of what's going on. You have to think about what you're doing. There are ramifications in life, and there are consequences, and they can sometimes be far more draconian than one can ever imagine. And it's just, I don't want to see you ruin your life when it's just beginning. I just don't want to see you do that. You conducted yourself here commendably. You tried the case. The jury just was very impressed with the way you handled yourself. I was as well. I thought you were respectful. I thought you did a very good job. It was impressive. You have a lot going on, and I could tell just the way you've conducted yourself throughout these proceedings. This is a completely foreign element to you. You were poised. You were respectful. You were competent. And I could just see that, you got a lot of good things going on for yourself, and I just don't want to see you ruin your life.
He came back after deliberating for 15 minutes in his chambers, which we actually found out that what he was really doing was telling the jury they could leave. So the jury left while we were all still in the courtroom, so we couldn't talk to them.
Tricky.
We should have had somebody on the outside, but we dropped that ball. Anyway, he comes back in, sits there pensively again, kind of paging through his book, making little notes, and then he finally issues this penalty against her, and he decides to actually reduce it. I was surprised because when I went to the jury trial, they gave me a 50% harsher sentence.
This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. They're attempting to make a clean sweep against politicians that are authoritarian and laws that are authoritarian. But they need your help. Join them at nhliberty.org. Again, that's nhliberty.org. Fighting to keep you free. Fighting at the State House every day. Oh, and I should say, don't join them. Join us, because I am a member of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. nhliberty.org